Hello everyone, it's Scott. We're back for day 8 of Tarkir Dragonstorm previews. We got some interesting cards to talk about today, a powerful Jeskai spell among them. But before we do, remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Tarkir Dragonstorm preview season and beyond. And if you're looking for cards from the set, you can always check us out on the web at caffeinatedgamers.tcgplayerpro.com. So let's look at today's previews. So first one is Jeskai Revelation. For 4, a blue, a red, and a white mana, you get an instant, and return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. So nice ability there. Basically, you're countering something with that ability, at least temporarily. And then Jeskai Revelation deals 4 damage to any target. Okay, it could be a creature, it could be a planeswalker, it could be your opponent. You get to create 2 1/1 white monk creature tokens with prowess. You get to draw 2 cards, and you also gain 4 life. So very, very powerful spell. It's kind of the toolbox of spells, and probably one of the better toolbox spells we've seen in a while. And I think this is definitely playable in Standard, and I think it's probably playable in some older formats as well. Commander, a definite. The question is going to be, can you ramp yourself into that 4 mana? That 7 total mana that you're going to need to cast this. That's where this one is probably not a 4 of index right away, but a couple of copies kind of for the late game when you're looking to win. I think this is a great spell for that point in the game. Next we have Felothar, Dawn of the Abzan. For a white, a black, and a green mana, you let your creature that's a human warrior and is a 3/3 with trample. Whenever Felothar enters the battlefield or attacks, you may sacrifice a non-land permanent. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So really powerful ability on Felothar. So the question is, do we have a way of creating enough minor things, whether it's tokens or things like that, that are going to be easily discarded after they're played? I think that's going to determine whether this is a good Standard card or not. On its surface, I think it has the potential to be really powerful, especially if you're playing an Abzan deck where you're trying to go wide with your strategy, where you're getting a lot of creatures onto the battlefield, and every turn when you attack, everybody gets a +1/+1 counter. In that case, I think it's really powerful and potentially has the ability to just take over games. But if you don't have stuff to sacrifice, then it kind of fizzles, and it's just a 3/3 with trample. And under those circumstances, I don't think this is a card that we would play in Standard. But if we're able to do a go wide strategy with this, then Standard playable definitely. Next we have Sage of the Skies. For 2 and a white mana, you get a human monk. That's a 2/3 with flying and lifelink. And when you cast this spell, if you've cast another spell this turn, copy this spell. The copy becomes a token. So this is one of those cards where on the surface it looks like it could be really a banger because you get 2 copies of it for 3 mana. But remember, we've had a lot of spells in Standard over the last year and a half that it requires you to cast your second spell to get an ability. So I have a little bit of reservations based on that problem, that we won't have the ability to cast something first and then cast this. But if we have that ability, then this is a very, very good Standard card because it has flying, it has lifelink, powerful abilities that will make this an important card in any white deck that you might have. Again, the key thing is, am I going to be able to cast enough spells to get that trigger, meaning I cast that second spell. Next we have Thunder of Unity. For a red, a white, and a black mana, you get a saga where you draw 2 cards on chapter 1 and lose 2 life. On chapters 2 and 3, whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield this turn, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So interesting abilities. I think 3 mana to draw 2 and lose 2 is kind of the going rate for this kind of ability in Standard. And then the Chapter 2 and 3 abilities where every time you're casting a creature or a creature enters the battlefield under your control, and those could be tokens, then you're going to get the added bonus of your opponent losing 1 life every time that happens, and you gain a life every time that happens. So under those circumstances, if you're playing a go wide strategy where you're going to be able to put down multiple creatures every turn, then I think this definitely has a place in Standard. Now, is this going to be a 4 of index? I don't think so, but I think it definitely does have a place. Next, we've got some lower rarity cards for the day, and the first one is Lightfoot Technique. For 1 and a white mana, you get an instant, and you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains flying and indestructible until end of turn. So great combat trip, good limited card. Probably won't see any standard play. Next, we have Unending Whisper. For a blue mana, you get a sorcery where you draw a card. It also has Harmonize. For 5 and a blue mana, you may cast this card from your graveyard for its Harmonized cost. You may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by X, where X is its power, then exile this spell. So this is one of those cards that certainly in limited I'm gonna play this as a card draw spell, but in standard we do have a couple of other 1-drop spells that draw a card. So I'm not sure if it even has a home there, but the fact that you can play it a second time out of your graveyard for its Harmonize ability might be enough to put a copy or 2 in a couple of decks. Next, we've got Dragon's Prey. For 2 and a black mana, you get an instant, and this spell costs 2 more to cast if it targets a dragon, and you get to destroy a target creature. Limited playable only, because it's 5 mana if you're trying to kill a dragon. If you're trying to kill a non-dragon, okay, it's 3. Just a reasonable removal spell in a limited format. Next, we've got Channel Dragonfire. For a red mana, you get a sorcery, and Channel Dragonfire deals 2 damage to any target. So this is a shock ability. And it has Harmonize. For 5 and 2 red mana, you may cast this card from your graveyard. For its Harmonized cost, you may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by X, where X is its power, then exile this spell. So the fact that you can play this a second time might be good enough to see a copy of this, or maybe 2, find its way into a mono red strategy, or maybe even if we end up with a Jeskai deck or an Izzet deck that would like to do some direct damage. And as long as we've got enough creatures that we can reduce that cost enough, then I think it might have some standard playability under those circumstances. In limited, definitely a card I'd be wanting to use. Next, we've got Unsparring Boltcaster. For 2 and a red mana, you get an Orc Wizard. That's a 3/3. And when this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target creature an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. So this is one of those cards on the surface, it looks pretty good, but you've got to deal creature damage for its ability to activate. And I think in standard, that's probably not going to happen enough to make this worthwhile, because we've got better 3-drops in standard. In limited, it's more likely to happen where you go to combat, something is damaged, and then you play it afterwards and you get to kill that creature. So limited, I think this is a quality 3-drop. Outside of that, probably not seeing much play. Next, we've got Encroaching Dragonstorm. For 3 and a green mana, you get an enchantment, and when this enchantment enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. When a dragon you control enters the battlefield, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. So very good spell for an enchantment, because you're going to get 2 basic lands when you cast this the first time. So I think for 4 mana and the fact that they go on the battlefield, that's kind of the going rate for this in standard, and really has been the going rate for a while in standard. So I think this is definitely playable. The question is there going to be a deck that wants this? Meaning, is there a dragon deck that this would fit into? Because I think that's probably the place that it will fit best, because if you have a dragon that you control enter the battlefield, then you can bring it back to your hand, then you can recast it, get additional mana advantage because of that. And definitely in a ramp style deck, this has the potential to be a very, very powerful card. Next, we've got Frontline Rush for a red and a white mana. You get an instant, and you get to choose one, create two 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, or target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So I think this may have a place in a go wide tokens deck, because you're going to get two tokens, and we already know we've got planeswalkers like Elsbeth that double the number of tokens that you're going to be creating. So if Elsbeth's on the field at that point, then you can create four 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. And in that case, I think that might have some standard playability in that style of deck. In limited, I think it's a good card because if you have 4 or 5 creatures on the field, you play this, you use the +X/+X ability, and one of those creatures has flying, you can give that additional power and toughness to that creature, and maybe it gets through for lethal damage. So in limited, definitely a good card. Not sure about it in standard. And our last card of the day is Kin Tree Severance. Okay, and this is one of our hybrid mana ones where it's 2 and a white, 2 and a black, or 2 and a green mana. And you get an instant, and you get to exile target permanent with mana value 3 or greater. So if there is an Abzan deck in standard, I think this is definitely at a minimum a sideboard card, because all the dragons in the set are going to be 3 mana or greater. So under those circumstances, I think this is a very good card, and it's a non-land permanent with mana value 3 or greater. So that pretty much can, is going to take off the battlefield the best creature they have, the best artifact, the best enchantment they have. So definitely, I think a sideboard option if we have an Abzan deck in standard. All right. So those are our cards from day 8 of Tarkir Dragonstorm Spoiler season. And thanks for staying to the end of the video. And if you could give us you could subscribe, we'd appreciate that. We're trying to get to 300 subscribers, and we're pretty close now. So I would appreciate if you give us a like and subscribe. And I've left here at the end of the video the complete playlist for our Tarkir Dragonstorm previews, and also that like and subscribe button. So thanks. I will see you in the next one.